Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namam Vishnuvadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvasesha Sunyavari Paskachade Satarane Om Jnanatimaranyasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So today we're studying from Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita as it is, and we're going to be discussing chapter 6. So in the beginning of Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita as it is, they give a little overview of all the chapters. So here we're discussing Dhyana Yoga. Ashtanga Yoga is a mechanical, meditative practice controlling the mind and senses and focusing the concentration on the Paramatma, or the Supersoul, the form of the Lord situated in the heart. This practice culminates in Samadhi, or full consciousness of the Lord. So I went through a lot of Srila Prabhupada's classes on the folio, and so I've taken some notes on some of the main verses that Prabhupada gives us from chapter 6. So we'll begin with the chapter 6, text 1. I'll chant just a few of the Sanskrit verses because they're so beautiful. We're very fortunate that Srila Prabhupada has given us this Bhagavad Gita as it is, and establishing Krishna as a supreme person, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who 5,000 years ago, right here in India, in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, spoke these beautiful words and instructions to his dear devotee Arjuna. So because of Srila Prabhupada, we now get to access this beautiful Bhagavad Gita, the Song of God. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Anashrita karma palam karyam karma karoti ya sa sanyasi cha yogi cha na niragnir na chakriya. So Arjuna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, said to Arjuna, one who is unattached to the fruits of his work and who works as he is obligated is in the renounced order of life, and he is the true mystic, not he who lights no fire and performs no duty. So Srila Prabhupada comments in this regard that the real perfection is to act for the satisfaction of the Lord, or the Supreme Lord, or act for the satisfaction of Krishna, or the Supreme Lord. So we see Lord Krishna is explaining the importance of purifying oneself by the process of Nishkama Karma Yoga, which means work without expectation of return, which is very difficult. So Prabhupada says a devotee of a Krishna or a Krishna conscious person, he works only for the satisfaction of Krishna, and he has no selfish motives. Such a devotee, he can be called a perfect sannyasi or a yogi. So we move on to verse 6.5 that Prabhupada chants a lot in the chapter called Dhyana Yoga. One must deliver himself with the help of his mind and not degrade himself. The mind is the friend of the conditioned soul and his enemy as well. For him who has conquered the mind is the best of friends. But for one who has failed to do so, his mind will remain the greatest enemy. So Prabhupada comments in the purports that a controlled mind is the friend of the soul, while the uncontrolled mind is the enemy. He explains that the mind is the best friend for one who has conquered it, and the mind will remain the worst enemy for one who has failed to conquer it. Prabhupada says the best way to disentangle oneself and engage the mind in Krishna consciousness by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, and studying these books and engaging in the 9 devotional processes, then our mind is automatically engaged in a higher activity. So Prabhupada goes on to 6. I'm chanting the verses that I saw Prabhupada referring to many times on the folio for chapter 6. So chapter 16, text 16 and text 17, we've heard Prabhupada chant these verses many times. There is no possibility of one's becoming a yogi, O Arjun, if one eats too much or eats too little, sleeps too much, or does not sleep enough. And in this regard, Prabhupada explains that as if we are eating too much or sleeping too much, then we will be under the dictations of lust, anger, and illusion. But when the mind is completely conquered by regulating the senses, we voluntarily agree to abide by the dictations of the Lord. So we see how Prabhupada has given us a very regulated program every day. We get up at the same time, we go to Mangalarti, we have our Govindamadi Pudasham, we have Guru Puja, we have Srimad Bhagavatam, the same time every day around the world. And then we have our own deity worship in our homes, where we offer our Lord's prasadam in the morning and in the afternoon and sometimes in the evening. And in that way, everything is regulated. So our senses, in being regulated, become less entangled in material activities, is what Prabhupada's saying here. So Prabhupada is explaining that the conditions to fulfill material desires in this world is very easy these days, but it's very difficult to become self-realized, especially in the big cities. So he explains that the easiest form of meditation, as opposed to the Ashtanga Yoga that's being explained here in chapter 6, the easiest meditation for, Prabhupada says, the ever-disturbed people of Kali Yuga. I find that interesting. We're always disturbed, aren't we, in one way or another? But Prabhupada gives us the sublime process for countering this disturbance. And of course, that's the chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I find myself when I'm feeling disturbed or there's some troublesome issue happening in my life, I put my hand in my bead bag and I just roll the Tulsi beads and start chanting, not for the sake of another round, but like a friend, somebody who's going to give me some solace, some guidance. And Bhagavad-Gita is like that also. Bhagavad-Gita is like a best friend. I have my Bhagavad-Gita by the door, and sometimes I'll just go to, oh, Krishna, tell me something. And I was just hearing in a class this morning, Prabhupada said, suppose you had someone, you could go to that person and get the perfect answer, the perfect guidance, the perfect friendship, someone who will never cheat you or turn their back on you. And of course, Prabhupada says in this lecture, that's Krishna. So when we go to Bhagavad Gita, we're going directly to Krishna. And we can open up Bhagavad Gita anywhere, at any time, and Krishna will give us some personal guidance. So we discussed that if we eat just for the pleasure of our senses, then Prabhupada describes that this is eating only sin. So, and what to speak of those who are engaging in eating animal meat or drinking and smoking. We find that many, in the West, there's many yoga teachers, so-called yoga teachers. They're teaching the yoga asanas to gain the peace, but they themselves are eating meat and doing different kinds of sinful activities. So how can one who's doing those kind of activities give peace to another person? So we're very blessed that Srila Prabhupada, because he's the perfect acharya and he's a pure devotee, perfectly in control of his senses, then we're getting information from the pure source connected to Krishna. Prabhupada recommends that the process of Bhakti Yoga or devotional service unto Krishna is actually the best practice of yoga. Prabhupada maintains that one achieves the state of samadhi and boundless happiness simply by executing the path of Krishna consciousness, which is a simple and easier path to execute. So here we come across one of my favorite verses, and I was so happy to see that Prabhupada, he was chanting this verse many times in his classes. 2 verses actually, 626, Yato yato nischalati manas chanchalamashtiram tatastato nayam yaitat atmayeva visham nayet. From wherever the mind wanders due to its flickering and unsteady nature, one must certainly withdraw it and bring it back under the control of the self. And then there's a way to do that. Krishna explains in text 30, for one who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me, I am never lost, nor is he ever lost to me. This purport of 630 is, to me, the culmination of seeing Krishna in everything and everyone, and the process of Bhakti Yoga in a nutshell, and what Prabhupada has given us. I'll just take a few minutes to go through it. Purport: a person in Krishna consciousness certainly sees Lord Krishna everywhere, and he sees everything in Krishna. Such a person may appear to see all separate manifestations of the material nature, but in each and every instance, he is conscious of Krishna, knowing that everything is a manifestation of Krishna's energy. Nothing can exist without Krishna, and Krishna is the Lord of everything and everyone. This is the basic principle of Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is the development of love of Krishna, a position transcendental even to material liberation. Prabhupada was just saying the other day in a class that if we simply love Krishna, which is what this whole process is about, then all our desires will be fulfilled, and we will get very easy direction in regards to our problems and difficulties. If we simply try to love Krishna. So an intimate relationship between the Lord and the devotee exists eternally. In that stage, the living entity can never be annihilated, nor is Krishna ever out of sight of this devotee. It is stated in the Brahma Samhita. I won't hurt your ears by trying to chant the whole, but Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. I worship the primeval Lord Govinda, who is always seen by the devotee, whose eyes are anointed with the pulp of love. He is seen in his eternal form of Shama Sundar, situated within the heart of the devotee. So you see why Prabhupada, he wanted us to understand that simply by chanting the Govindam prayers every morning, we chant the Guru Puja prayers, we chant different prayers all day long, so that we can anoint our eyes, Prabhupada says, with the love ointment. He says in one class, we want our eyes to be anointed with this love ointment so that the devotee never loses sight of the Lord. And of course, sometimes we will lose sight of the Lord and different things happen and we forget Krishna. But just as we were saying before, we pull our senses back. Maybe we withdraw from the situation and we can sit quietly somewhere and roll our tulsi beads and start chanting. Or, oh Krishna, I'm having this difficulty. Open up Bhagavad Gita, my friend, my best friend, and Krishna will give us some perfect guidance. Such a yogi, a bhakti yogi, turns into a pure devotee and cannot bear to live for a moment without seeing the Lord within himself. So beautiful, isn't it? Prabhupada said that Krishna was speaking through him. So to hear from Krishna and Srila Prabhupada, his pure devotee, Krishna's best friend, Krishna's pure devotee, we're just so fortunate. And you know, there were many other Bhagavad Gitas before Prabhupada gave us Bhagavad Gita as it is. During my days in college, there were many Bhagavad Gitas, but none of them said Krishna says, Krishna wants us to, Krishna likes. It was all the light or the supreme energy or the divine within. And you hear a lot of people speaking like that today. And but this is not going to help us develop a loving relationship with the Lord. We have to know who that person is, his mother, his father, his family, his childhood pastimes here in Vrindavan. And that way, then we develop, Prabhupada says the process of Bhakti Yoga or devotional service unto Krishna is the best practice of yoga. Prabhupada maintains that one can achieve the state of samadhi and boundless happiness simply by executing the path of Bhakti Yoga, which is a simple and easier path to execute than all the asanas and the meditation sitting full upright with the kusha grass. Prabhupada mentions, as we've heard, it's very hard to find a very quiet place. And in some of these yoga classes, they say empty the mind. Prabhupada says that's impossible. There's always desires. But we can navigate those desires and beg for the ability to engage those desires in Krishna consciousness. So such a pure soul, Prabhupada says, is never lost to Krishna. Such a yogi realizes that Krishna and the Paramatma present in the hearts of all living entities are one and the same. So, and now we're coming to the conclusion of chapter 6. And we have another famous verse Prabhupada chants regularly. We've heard this verse many times. You'll hear how Krishna is such a poet. He's such he says things very beautifully, and Prabhupada also. He's such a beautiful poet. The way that the Bhagavad Gita is described is very melodious and very easy to hear. Some of these ancient scriptures and Vedic texts, they're very difficult to understand. But we're very blessed that Krishna and Prabhupada have made it very easy. So here, text 34, Krishna says, "For the mind is restless, turbulent, obstinate, and very strong. O Krishna, to subdue it, I think, is more difficult than controlling the," how does Arjuna say it? Controlling the wind. For one whose mind is unbridled, self-realization is difficult work. But he whose mind is controlled and who strives by the process of Krishna consciousness, we are assured of success. This is Krishna's opinion. So we move on to 639. Arjuna is saying, "These are my doubts, O Krishna, and I ask you to dispel it completely. But for you, no one is to be found who can destroy this doubt." So we're in that position also, aren't we? It's amazing how this beautiful Bhagavad Gita was given to us on a battlefield. We're on the battlefield every day, aren't we? With different things and relationships and services, so many things. And we can go to Krishna, we can go to Srila Prabhupada, and they will destroy our doubt. They will help us to understand our doubt simply by opening up Bhagavad Gita. So in the last verse, or let's see, 639 we go to. We just did that one. So now Prabhupada moves on to 647. Of course, we all we all have heard this verse also many times. 647. Yoginamapi sarvesham madgatinantaratmana Shadavan bhajate yomam same yuktatamamo mataha. I'm sure your Sanskrit is much more melodious. And the translation, and of all yogis, the one with great faith, who always abides in me, he thinks of me within himself and renders transcendental loving service to me. He is the most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. That is my opinion. And you see, Prabhupada has a long purport to this 647. You can take the time to read that. But I was, in my notes, Prabhupada explains that the culmination of all the kinds of yoga practices lies in Bhakti Yoga. We know the rung of several different kinds of yoga, and Bhakti Yoga is at the highest. He further explains, Prabhupada further explains, that all other yogas are progressions towards the destination of Bhakti Yoga. He concludes by saying that Bhakti Yoga, or Krishna consciousness, is the ultimate goal. So I was just noting here the class I was listening to earlier this morning. If we simply love Krishna, Prabhupada said, then all our desires will be fulfilled. Simply come in contact with Krishna and you will see Krishna face to face. Very beautiful. And of course, we all want to see Krishna face to face. Just see the process that Prabhupada has given us so nicely. In the 9 devotional processes, Archanam, the process of Archanam, where we can go and see Krishna face to face. We can offer flower garland. We can offer some food, leaf, flower, fruit, or water. We can offer our hearts. And we can actually talk to Krishna. And we can pray to Krishna. And Prabhupada, remember, he told us that if we have some disturbance, we simply go in front of Krishna and Balaram. We fold our hands. And Prabhupada said, my dear sirs, I'm having this problem today, this disturbance. I don't know what to do. You please guide me. And you'll see many times Krishna, through another devotee or something that we read or something that happens throughout the day, Krishna will manifest some solace, some guidance, some shelter for whatever we're going through. So thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purports to the 6th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, entitled Dhyana Yoga. The whole Bhagavad Gita is about Sarvadharman Parityajya, the last verse where we surrender everything to Krishna. And Prabhupada says that when we do that, we attain victory, we attain all opulence, morality, and extraordinary power. So in chapter 6, we can see that Prabhupada keeps emphasizing that these yoga asanas and different ways of meditation and Ashtanga yoga practices, yes, you can do like this, but it will take a long time. The short way is simply to give our hearts to Krishna and to surrender to this beautiful process that Srila Prabhupada has given us. And in that way, we are assured of success. And we get the experience, don't we? Krishna consciousness is not a dry process. We all feel something when we chant Hare Krishna or when we read Bhagavad Gita. So this is the process of surrendering, that every day we try to chant a little more attentively, we read a little bit more, we try to serve another devotee with heart, and we establish that consciousness of seeing Krishna in everything and everyone, and trying to surrender our lives to Srila Prabhupada and to Krishna. Hare Krishna.